Well, Woody, it's just us again. Darren's in Florida with the Vegas Golden Knights. Hey, don't get excited. He's dressing, but only in a studio uniform to host the Vegas broadcasts like he does every game. Welcome to the InGoal Radio Podcast, episode 206, presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports, Langley, and thehockeyshop.com. I'm David Hutchison here, once again keeping Darren Millard's seat warm, along with the one and only Kevin Woodley. Woody, Darren isn't practicing with Vegas, but I wonder if he's like you and packed his gear just in case.
No, they're going through goalies like crazy. They got a bunch now, right? They got Jonathan Quick now. They're good.
They do. But what about Darren Quick?
Yeah, I thought maybe they'd go with Darren, but you know.
Well, not every general manager is perfect, but what do you think? What do you think about Quickie being there now? What did you think of the trade deadline week or 2 weeks or whatever it was? I guess for goalies it was a pretty short one.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of moves with goaltending. It's funny. I talked to Marc-Andre Fleury here when Minnesota was in town just a couple of days ago about his experiences post-trade deadline and why maybe we don't see teams invest in goaltending the way they do other positions at the trade deadline. And, you know, he talked about how hard it was in a short period of time to adjust your reads. Again, not to, and we've talked about this before, but not to systems, because there are only certain variations and goalies figure it out quick. Like systems don't differ enough from team to team that goalies can't figure that out between a trade deadline acquisition and the end of the season. What takes longer to figure out is individual tendencies. And whether that's the calls on puck handling or where a guy's going to go on puck handling or where a guy's going to pressure on an odd man rush, even if the system says take away the pass, where guys like to pressure, how they like to play, who can you trust to be on the right side of a screen, who's maybe going to take your eyes away a little more. Everybody has individual tendencies, and we see this in pro reads all the time. As much as I always thought pro reads would be about what opponents are trying to do, how many of these videos that we have up at InGoalMag.com over the years with goalies breaking down their saves, they make a read where they talk to us about knowing where their defenseman is pressuring, counting on the guy to squeeze an opponent off in a certain spot and take away another option. Like, those things matter so much to a goalie's reads, and they're really hard to dial in when you've only got, 15 to 20, say there's 20 games after the trade deadline. Well, you're not playing all of them. And so I think that's a big part of why goaltending isn't a bigger part of the trade deadline, is because it is such a big adjustment, and some goalies have struggled with it. And so teams are hesitant to, in a buyer's or in a seller's market, invest a ton of assets in a position they're not sure can figure it out in time for the playoffs. So it kind of comes down to, the teams that are looking are the teams that, I don't want to say desperate, but they've got pretty big questions they need to solve. Anybody who's comfortable with their goaltending, I guess they're less comfortable that they can find an upgrade on the trade market. Even if they maybe that goalie is an upgrade overall, can he be an upgrade by the time things matter come the playoffs? That's a bigger question.
And we've talked before about how NHL general managers are so risk averse. If your goalie trade doesn't work, there's not much you can do about it. If your forward doesn't work out, well, put him on the third line and he doesn't see nearly as much ice or whatever. So it's a bit of a risk.
Yeah, and so, I think you can also do more than just there's the adjustment. So there's some things you can do when you're looking to mitigate some of these factors. Like, you can look at stats. You can look at, how a goalie might fit into your team system. I'll give you an example. Like, Joonas Korpisalo, in general terms, has been really good this year, especially since December 9th. Like, he was a guy that I had on the top of my trade target list for the various media I do around the league and in different cities, because since December 9th, and that seems like a fair, you think about the hip surgery he had in the offseason, talking to people around him, how much that hip injury sort of limited some of his movements and some of the positions he could get into that we require as goaltenders, and how freed up he was since the surgery. But it took a little while to adjust to a body that worked properly. And so first couple of months were a little bit hit and miss. He was right around expected, his performance relative to the environment. But then after December 9th, his adjusted numbers are, they're up there top 10 in the league, better than guys like Shesterkin and Ottinger. And, So like he's put on a good performance now for pretty close to 3 months. And if you're the Kings, we're a good defensive team. That's what you got to think if you're the Kings. And so in general, any goalie is going to benefit behind our system. Well, honestly, there's only 2 areas where Joonas Korpisalo's numbers were below expected this year. One was breakaways. Okay, well, let's check that against the Los Angeles Kings using ClearSight Analytics. Well, guess who gives up the fewest expected goals in the entire National Hockey League on breakaways?
I got an idea.
The Los Angeles Kings. So there you go. Joonas Korpisalo, one of his biggest statistical weaknesses this year is breakaways, and he's not going to have to worry about that with the Los Angeles Kings. Other one that he struggled with a little bit. Let's be fair.
How many has he faced in Columbus? It's a pretty small sample size, no?
No, I mean, like you're...
I know you don't have the number. That wasn't fair, but you know what I mean? It's a small sample size.
I think you're talking like 60 breakaways. So, oh yeah. Don't forget, we're not talking blue line in breakaways. They're divided into 3 or 4 different categories. You got partial ice, you got giveaways in front of the net that turn into one-on-one, say, below the hash mark. So there's multiple categories, but mano-a-mano, one-on-one, partial, clear-cut, or even just on giveaways inside the zone, it's an area he's struggled. And so it's not something he has to worry about in LA. Screens are another area where he's a little bit below expected. That's an area where the Kings are actually 26 in the NHL. Like as good as they are defensively, they tend to get in the eyes of their own goaltender. That's going to be something that Joonas Korpisalo has to adjust to in LA. That's one where you might look at it and go, ooh, I'm not sure if this is going to fit. The other part that I think you got to remember is he's never been traded before. And we saw this with Ryan Miller. Talk to me about it when, after that deal to St. Louis. And I think actually the Miller deal to St. Louis became the cautionary tale.
For sure.
So much was expected. And the adjustment was so big, adjusting to the Reeds, a team that wanted to play a different way. Him playing a style at the time that had a little more flow, a little more moving part, was a little more rush-based because of what Buffalo used to give up. And all of a sudden everything's end zone. So I think there are fits, goalie and systems and teams. There are different boxes you can check. And one of them is having done it before, and Joonas has never done it. And I think you add the pressure of the fact that Jonathan Quick, franchise icon, is the guy you replaced, and that's another layer. So there are a lot of questions that Joonas Korpisalo is going to have to answer in terms of almost between the ears as much as between the pipes, because between the pipes, what he faces kind of suits his game. He should be just fine. Between the ears, we don't get to see that, although I did talk to UC Saros today, and he's friends with Joonas, and he said if there's anybody who's sort of everything is water off a duck's back, that typical finish, don't get too worked up about anything. He thinks Joonas Korpisalo is going to be able to handle it just
well. That's good. I think people underestimate just the difficulty of the social situation for him. Walking into a new dressing room and a new one where longtime friend has been sent away a little bit unceremoniously. It's fitting into that situation could be difficult for some people, but it sounds like he'll be great. I have another question for you on this. We often also hear on Pro Reads about familiarity with the people who are shooting on the goaltender that you're interviewing and knowing something about their tendencies and knowing something about their team's tendencies. When you're shifting conferences and you haven't faced these guys nearly as much as you have in the past, is that going to be an issue in a short end to the season here?
Well, Corpy's been in the league, I think, like 8 years, so he's probably seen enough of the guys in the other conference that I think he should be okay. And maybe I'm overstating 8 years. I don't have it in front of me, but yeah, that can definitely be an adjustment. You know who it's not going to be an adjustment for? Jonathan Quick.
He's been around a while.
Because the flip side of that one, man, like I think everybody in the NHL that covers the NHL is dreaming for the Vegas Golden Knights Los Angeles King matchup in the playoffs, just so you talk about a guy knowing the tendency of the shooters that are going at him. Jonathan Quick against his old team, because after the Korpisalo deal, and like you said, unceremoniously dismissed as Jonathan Quick, the Vegas Golden Knights go out and get him. And statistically, he wouldn't have been the next guy on my list if I was looking for goaltending help. That would have been Kevin Lankinen, who is quietly having an exceptional season, has made some nice changes to his game under Ben Vanderklok with the Nashville Predators. I got to see them work really hard on an off day here way back in November. You could see the work that was going into it, and it's really paid off. Lankinen, despite not playing that often, has played really well. I thought he, as a pending UFA, would be an attractive target for a lot of teams. Obviously, Nashville liked what they're giving him because they re-upped him for another year, and he's been really, really good there. Nashville, along with the New York Islanders and Boston Bruins, have one of the top 3 tandems in the league. I think Lankinen gets overlooked because UC Pitt plays so much ahead of him. But that's a guy, if I was another team, I would have targeted. statistically, Quick's having a tough year. Like, his save percentage is a full 4 points below expected. And to put that in context, like, people are like, what does that mean? That means on every 100 shots, he gives up 4 more goals than you would expect. And if you considered 25 shots a game average, that's a goal a game.
Which is a ton.
Below expected.
Which is a ton.
That's a lot. That said, man, like, I mean, the track record, the knowledge, the experience, we saw what he did. Last year wasn't great either when we looked at the adjusted numbers. I know a lot of people thought of last year as a bounce back, but the adjusted numbers painted a picture that made it seem more like the Kings system was responsible for a large share of the, raw save percentage bounce back. But then in the playoffs, he was fine. So, I think you can't underestimate what that experience means come playoff time, even if statistically he would have been well down the list of guys you would have thought, hey, this is an upgrade. And if you're Vegas, Logan Thompson's a great story, but he's out for a while. Laurent Brossoit was on a heater his first 3 games back, get called up, was playing exceptionally well. He's out probably 3 weeks, maybe longer. Although, again, if he can come back for the playoffs, it's not like they've said, hey, we got Jonathan Quick and he's our guy. There's an opportunity here for any one of those guys to get back, show they can be healthy and in form, and take that come playoff time. And I got to be honest with you, the way he played in those 3 games before the injury, I like Laurent Brossoit's chances of still maybe being the guy in Vegas when the shots matter the most come playoff time, because he looked dialed in those 3 games. It was really nice to see, knowing everything he's been through to get back to that point.
Just a reminder, we'll be getting to our feature interview soon, presented by Sense Arena Virtual Reality Training for Goalies. And here at the InGoal Radio Podcast, presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports, Langley. But first, Kevin, goalie goals. How excited were you? Because you didn't just see the replays on Instagram that everybody else saw. You were there.
I was there, and I just spent the previous 2 days with Linus Ullmark. Well, 2 of the previous 3 days. Went down to Seattle, spent a little time with Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark after a practice day in Seattle. Then came back up here, spent a practice day with them. We did the Pro Reads video with Linus Ullmark. So for InGoal Magazine premium subscribers, make sure you go check out. We got 2 up already with Linus, breaking down
and a
video.
Drill, so 3 Linus Ullmark articles.
Yeah, we got the Pro Drills as well with him and Swayman doing a little low-high work. But then, to talk about your in-goal bump, 2 days with Woody, and you get an empty net goal. And so he's now the 8th goalie in NHL history to shoot a puck into a net. I know there's other goalies that have credit, last guy to touch it stuff, but 8 goalies have shot a puck into the net. I've now seen 2 of them. I'm 25% for goalie goals in the NHL. Evgeny Nabokov in 2003 and Linus Ullmark a couple of weeks ago, and I got to say the Ullmark shot might have been the best I've ever seen. Like, just launched 3-4 checkers in his face, barely clears them, but that's because they were like 20 feet away from him, puts it over their head, lands it at the far hash mark. Perfectly flat, dead center, perfect shot. Super excited to see it, obviously, in person, and then to get to talk to him in the room a little bit after, ask him some questions, both with the camera running. Everyone who has probably seen the scrum. And if you did, you can probably recognize my voice with a couple of those questions. But then a little, just shoot the breeze afterwards, me and him. And it's funny because everybody knows he just missed at the Winter Classic. He said if he'd hit at the Winter Classic on that stage, if he'd scored an empty net goal, he might have just skated up the ice and retired.
Wouldn't that be something? I'm waiting for the guy who lands it in the net on the fly. Do you think anybody's going to do that? We know somebody who guys can do it.
Yeah, we know guys can do it. I mean, Smitty used to come in here and play around at the end of a morning skate, and he damn near would bank it off the bottom of the scoreboard up above. He could launch it so high and so far. He could probably pick a corner from his
Can you imagine?
Hand. Linus, the way he chucked that, like he wasn't short of it. So yeah, I mean, I can see that happening. And here's the thing. You have to in Vancouver. Not when Nabokov did it in 2003, because it wasn't an issue then. The ice here is so bad. Like, I've had goalies come in here from other teams consistently this season talking about having to change their sharpenings mid-game, especially when it rains in Vancouver. And hey, guess what? It rains a lot in Vancouver. The ice gets so soft that I've had goalies. I've actually had goalies. I'm not going to name anyone, but I've had Canucks goalies over the years, the past couple of years, say, you can't even try for an empty netter here because they don't trust the balance. They just think it's so bad. And so that's what makes Linus's goal that much more special. He had to get it all the way down to the far hash marks. He had to land it perfectly flat because the ice here is so bad. You have that much less margin for error in Vancouver. And for him to nail it the way he did, man, it was just so impressive in every regard. And then we published the first pro reads, and the next night he goes into Edmonton and stops 54 or 57 in an overtime win. Thank you very much. Hand him the Vezina Trophy, in-goal bump. We love you, Linus Ullmark. Thanks for spending the time, and happy to provide a bump in return.
Hey, NHL goalies listening, you want to get on the podcast, you want to chat with Woody, because your chances of scoring a goal are up, your chances of making 50-plus saves and a win are up. You're going to get the in-goal bump. Not all of them quite know that, though, Woody, so it actually has been a little while since our last show. We should just come clean on that now, right?
Yeah, we should. We apologize to our listeners. We haven't been able to. I mean, I think we're 4 years in a hitting
We're doing
weekly?
pretty good, yeah.
We finally missed a week.
Yeah, 205 at 206, not bad.
This is, part of this is just the nature of the beast. We're into, Darren's not here right now. We're all chasing a lot of different things. It's a busy time of the year. Trade deadline accentuated that. It's been hard to get guys, and I got to be honest, it has been hard even in person when guys are at the rink. Getting 15, 20 minutes to make it a worthwhile interview and not just the usual, 110% cliches that goalies throw out, in a post game or post morning practice scrum. It's been tough. So yeah, if you are an NHL goalie, and I know you listen, I know you guys, some of you at least listen. I know the goalie coaches listen. Guys, hit us up. It's been a little tougher the last couple of weeks for us to get enough guests to make this happen. So we apologize for that delay. We've been busy too, but you need bumps. We need in-goal bumps, and Linus got the ultimate in-goal bump. So yeah, we apologize that it's taken a couple of weeks, but we're happy to bring you Frederic Chabot today. A really good goalie coach. Guy Devin Dubnyk told me about way back in the days in Edmonton about how good this guy was. Got to work with him at Net 360. Geez, it's been a few years now.
Yeah, I actually wrote out some notes so that, because I'm not Darren, I can't do this off the cuff, right? So I wrote some.
A proper intro. So I'm ruining it.
All I have to say is how I was going to begin what you're doing right now is to say, who's on the show this week, Woody? And please restrict your answer to fewer than 50 words or 45 seconds. Can you do that?
I can, but I feel like we got to save that now because, we're talking about the feature interview. We haven't.
We'll come back. We'll come back. You're just going to let everybody know what's going on today, and then we're going to head over to the hockey shop. So, do you want to try that again? Let's just go back.
45 seconds. Here we go.
Start the clock.
17 years in the National Hockey League as a goalie. As I found out in this interview, came up right as François Allaire's coming up with the Montreal Canadiens. So a lot of exposure right to the beginning of the butterfly. But Tony Esposito inspired at the beginning for Frederic Chabot. Some time in Europe, coaching Edmonton Oilers, Minnesota Wild. He's worked with Rolly Melanson. Has a great story about working with Bernie Parent, a drill from Bernie Parent that he still uses today. There is so much great stuff in this interview from a guy who played in the league and pro for 17 years, good chunk of it in the league, and is now coaching for a decade. Just a guy that I love to talk to, and I think that everyone's going to enjoy the interview when we get to it. But first, I think we got to go to the hockey shop and tell you how to get skates that are so sharp and so perfect that you too will skate like a pro.
That was pretty good. I should have stuck with the 50 words, not the 45 seconds. You took full advantage there, buddy. Okay.
I just talked. So
that's the feature interview, which will be coming up later, presented by Sense Arena Virtual Reality Training for Goalies. But you did go spend some time with Cam, as I know you love to do, over at the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports Langley. Before we get into the gear segment, anything new happening over at the shop? You must be loving it these days.
Well, we've showed you some of the new stuff. They still got like you've seen some of the images on their social media account. PX3, lots of different colors, lots of different colorways from the True line. They've got the Warrior G6 in stock now, right down to junior sizes, including the slide plate. So those are a couple of over the past month items that are either new or new in terms of having inventory for everyone. We're into that time of season where there's a lot of new stuff coming in on a Pretty soon it'll be on an almost daily basis for some of the new launches, some of the new lines coming out in the spring. So there's lots of different options. There's still some leftovers from that Bauer Pro Return sale that you can have there. A lot of good feedback on Warrior's new stick with the specially designed handle. It's not square to sort of help you with the puck handling. We've had a lot of positive feedback there. So yeah, make sure you check them out at thehockeyshop.com. Whether it's new or on sale, they've got something that will help you become a better goalie. And I think actually, above all, they've got the expertise to make sure that whatever they put you into will actually help you become a better goalie. They don't just sell you gear because you need new gear. They sell you the gear that's going to work for you. And the only way they're able to do it is because they've got an expert staff like Cam and everyone else that works there that actually plays the position, understands the position, and is there to help you play and wear gear that will help you play it better.
You're not lying, Woody. I went in one time, wanted to get custom skates for the kid, and Cam talked me out of it. I could have spent a whole lot more money, talked me out of it, said, you don't want to do that. It's a waste of your money right now at his age. Here's what you need to get.
You know what? I've seen him do that, and I've talked about this a few times, but I think that's a really good point. And not to give Cam too much love, because he just got back from Mexico. So I imagine that he's going to have a sunburn on his already bloated head. I wouldn't want him to, peel prematurely.
Oh, you got to get in there and record this week. I'll bring my camera over so we can really get some good shots of
sunburn Cam. Well, I got to say, though, I've been in there a bunch of times and watched him work with parents and kids and, hey, what if I spend this extra $500 on this mask? And he's going to tell you honestly, right? Like, that's the thing. It is about gear that works for you and your child. He is not going to oversell you to make a bigger sale. He's going to make sure. And this is one of those cases where not only did the kid not need, the more expensive, more protective helmet just because of the level he was facing, but it might not have been safe for him because it wasn't going to fit properly. The sizing wasn't the same. It would have been heavier. And I love that honesty. There are a lot of places you can go where if you're willing, and let's be honest, the position's expensive. And so quite often you go in there with an expectation. And sometimes we can think, hey, if we spend more money, we'll get better stuff. And there are times where that's true, but there are other times where it's unnecessary. And Cam and his crew will give you the honest goods about what you need to spend. Again, whether it's for you or your child, for your game. If it's the highest end pro level gear, they've got it. But if you don't need that, they're going to be honest with you and they're going to tell you, hey, you'll probably be fine in this option instead. So it's something I respect a lot about the way they run things at the hockey shop and about the way Cam handles things when he's on the floor selling you gear.
And if you want custom gear, that's how you do it too. You sit down with Cam and he'll walk you through the whole process. It's how you get, whether you're looking for CCM, Bauer, True, whatever it might be, Cam's your guy.
100%.
Okay. Just a reminder, we're going to have Frederic Chabot from Minnesota in the Sense Arena feature interview soon. But before that, Woody's going to head over to the hockey shop. Just a reminder that all these gear segments get presented on our YouTube channel as well. And we would really appreciate it if you would check those videos out, give them a thumbs up, hit subscribe, even leave a comment. Really appreciate the comments from people who've tried the gear and giving us their opinion to sort of flesh out the review that Cam and Woody do. So please do that. But before that, Woody, well, now I guess we should say, Woody, can you toss us to the gear segment? What do we got?
Let's go talk to Cam about how to become a better skater. It's all about skating. We're going to hear that from Frederic Chabot here in a minute. All about skating. Well, guess what? Blade profiling matters for goalies too. It doesn't get talked about enough. So we had Cam walk us through some of the custom options, custom blade profiles to help you skate better. So if you ever get the opportunity to be on the ice with Frederic Chabot, you're going to not be as embarrassed as I would be.
Over at thehockeyshop.com and the Hockey Shop Langley, we've got Cam and Woody talking about blade profiling.
This is the sharpening headquarters. This is where the Cam and Cecil and the crew put in the cut. Well, I don't know. They don't trust Cam. Cam's kind of like me, not allowed to work with power tools. Nope. Something about over-unders on hospitals. There's a certification. Yeah. Cam's not certified, but he can tell you what type of profile you might like in your skate. So we're going to walk through you here. I mean, there is so much literature out there on on player profiles. We want to walk through some of the unique things you can accomplish with a custom goalie skate profile. So Sam, one of the names. Yeah. Cam, that's me. Walk me through. Let's start with what comes on my skates when I buy goalie skates. I guess Bauer's starting to put some radius on some of their products, but your typical average, like 5-10 years ago, goalie skate is what type of profile, but it's a 27-foot radius?
Very, very close to a 27-foot. So it's not like nothing's like 100% flat. That's, you definitely want to get across.
Even goalie skates have a little curvature.
Correct. So now say if you're like resetting a blade or you're getting a new blade dressed.
So you don't come here, you go somewhere else where some kid grinds the heel and the toe off of your skate and ends up looking like a banana, and you just want to get back to stock. That's
for a 27-foot.
27-foot radius. That's how they do it here. So now into the custom profiles.
Correct. One of my favorite ones to recommend just as a starting point, especially if you haven't had a radius before, is the 24-28. Personally is what I skate on myself. Don't let that deter you. No, I know, don't. But in terms of for a recommendation, it's a great place to start to get used to profiles. So what that all means is that I am going to be shaving off some of your steel up in the front of your toe of your skate. So that is going to tip you a little bit more onto your toes, a little bit more onto, like, say, the balls of your feet. That way, when you're sitting in your stance, you can really feel like you have that first, like, quarter of your blade connected.
So, yeah. So I have a question. So because people are like 24, 27 stock, 24, 28, what does that mean? So
we're drawing a big circle.
That's the, and so the bigger the number, the sort of less curve there is in there. So on a 24-28, you've got that 24-foot radius, which has more of a curvature at the front of the skate.
Correct.
Does it start actually in the middle of the blade? Is that where does it start on the blade?
So exactly midpoint of your skate is where the actual bar lines up. So 24-foot begins there, and to the back, then you get your 28 radius.
So a little flatter on the back, a little more curve on the front. Subtle. It's not extreme. To be honest with you, I had it done on my most recent pair of skates. Noticed a little bit of pitch forward, but this isn't an extreme thing, but it will help you sort of get on your toes a little bit more in a 24.
Post transition, also find in terms of catching your edge and finding your toe for that push off, which can be difficult for some goalies, especially with the way that boot is integrating into the post now. In terms of finding that toe edge and making sure you get a solid push off, I found that this really helped my game in terms of it. So,
okay. Goalie Sam.
Yeah, let's take it to another level. So let's remove some more material off the toe of your skate. So we're starting with a 10, 50, and then a 27.
Oh, 10. Okay, confused. Show me where on the blade I get my 10, my 50, and my 27. Is 27 the back half?
Correct. So basically what I'm saying is that
stock on the back half of the skate.
Correct. I'll show. We go 10 foot in the front. So that's really aggressive into that toe pitch. But really what helps to even that out is that 50 in the middle. So basically that gives you a flat part in the middle where you get a little bit more stability. So as you're in, say, what we'll call like a resting phase, or, you're waiting and anticipating the shot, this allows you to like move onto your toe. That shot's coming, shot anticipated, and then allows you to move back into that mid portion of the skate once you're onto your next play and your next movement, for example. That heel, again, with being just that soft 27, you get a little bit of it there. You'll notice it, especially as you're coming out of a transition, like back onto your feet and whatnot. So it should help to stop you from fully falling back or rolling over by any means. But you still have that ability to kind of rock your skate forward onto your toe and get that control that you're looking for.
Okay, so flatter in the middle. So I said 27 starts at the back or from the middle. It's actually more to the back. Do you roughly know where on the blade? Like 50 is what? 2/3 of the blade is 50, the front third. Like, how does that work?
We're chopping into thirds on this one. So
middle third is 50.
Correct.
Front third is 10.
Correct.
So quite rounded.
Correct.
And the back third is a 27-foot radius.
That's correct.
All right. We'll come back and we'll check out Bauer's goalie ellipsis in the near future, but that's a nice little quick run through, I think, on your basic 3 options of goalie profiles. Thanks, Cam.
Thanks, Tim.
Woody, I'm not sure I can skate well enough to need a profile on my blades, but I can tell you, not just because it helps with how you skate, but sometimes blades get to that point, they just don't want to hold an edge anymore. And maybe you have to go and regrind the skates or something. But one thing you can do that we did was go to the hockey shop and get them to throw a profile on there as well. And when they do that, blades are all tickety-boo, ready to go. And I know that my guy, when he started with a profile for the first time, he said everything about his skating was better. Even the things you wouldn't expect. You expect the edge work to be better, But he said even shuffling in the crease was better because the blade was set up for where he needed his weight distributed and so on. I think it's a fantastic thing to do. And if you're looking for those little details that it will help you be a better goaltender and ultimately enjoy your time on the ice more, I think profiling's a bit of a no-brainer now.
Yeah, talk to Cam about what you need, what your preferences are. I went with a 24-28 for my first custom profile, and I don't know that I'd ever go back. Maybe one of these days I'll try something different, but just that little bit of a forward pitch on the front. I wear a CCM skate, so it's a little more neutral, not as automatically forward pitch, but I don't know. I just love the way it sets up, a little flatter on the back, a little more curve on the front. It's subtle, but you notice the difference, and that's the beauty too. Just having new, it's a good excuse to get new steel. Because mine was worn a little down, and man, fresh set of steel, a little extra height on there. Boy, does it make a difference grabbing an edge to move across the crease. And when it's profiled properly, even more so.
So I use it to save my old steel. You use it as an excuse to buy new steel, but you live in the high rent district in Vancouver.
Yep. Me and my practice sticks. No, I guess I could just have practice.
Well, it's because you save money on
too.
sticks. You've got money for new steel.
That's right.
Yeah, you're actually smart,
right.
Woody. You're more practical than I realized.
I'm not as stupid as I look.
Okay. Our feature interview this week is presented by Sense Arena, as it is every week. And Woody, they've got this promotion on that I think might make people take the jump finally. The new 3x3 promotion. I think it should be something like 3-on-3 because we're hitting spring season. A lot of kids get out there for little 3-on-3 leagues, but it's the 3x3 promotion. And what it means is you get a free mount or sleeves, depending on if you're getting the player or the goalie version, because I don't know if everybody even realizes there's now a player version of Sense Arena, and you can even register an account in each if you do subscribe to Sense Arena, but you get those mounts or the little sleeves that put the Oculus controllers onto your goalie gloves. You get a free 10-day trial with it to see if you really, really love it, and maybe which of the different tiers, because there's now multiple tiers of Sense Arena so that it's a little easier to get into, a little more affordable. And then you also get free shipping so that those sleeves, or if you're getting the Oculus headset as well, get sent your way for free. And then if you want an extra little savings, use that code IGM50, InGoal Mag 50, and you save a little bit of money on top of this great deal they've got going now. So Sense Arena, now's a great time. So many seasons are wrapping up. I know a lot of leagues have already finished as playoffs are finishing. Great chance to start a new habit, whether it's 3 times a week or whether it's every day for 20 minutes. Get in there, use Sense Arena. You will be a better goaltender next season when it rolls around. You will be a step ahead of the competition. Give it a go. Okay, Woody, I'm going to take the time limit off, introduce us to our featured guest, Frederic Chabot.
Oh, I already did it.
You got it all in 45 seconds? That's not even possible.
I'm at a loss for words.
Oh,
listen,
there we go.
Let's
did
put it this way. What do we do?
We made you at a loss for words. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? We didn't get to tell the story the first time we met Freddie at Net 360 camp.
That's true.
I remember being on the ice with him, and this is one that jumps out to me. Like I said, Devin Dubnyk had told us for years about how good a goalie coach this guy was, and so after his time in Edmonton, there's a little bit of gap before he got another opportunity with the Minnesota Wild. He was with their farm team for a bit, and you're seeing the results now in Minnesota as well. We all know about Marc-Andre Fleury. I think since mid-December, especially, his numbers have been off the charts. Philip Gustafsson having a hell of a year. Actually leads the NHL. He just passed Linus Ullmark in adjusted save percentage. So they're like 1-2 in the National Hockey League. So not sure what Ottawa was thinking there in terms of giving them away, although they got some really good young goalies coming up as well. But just, had this success as a coach. But the thing that jumped out to me about being on the ice with Freddie was when we were on the ice, one of the drills that they were doing, it's not so much about the drills as the goalies he was doing it with. And I have it on video, and it was Chris Driedger and Laurent Brossoit at the same time. Young, neither one of those guys in the NHL on a full-time basis at that point. Both now. And you couldn't have had 2 goalies that played it any different. And Freddie worked with both of them to solve the same problems in different ways as he went through this drill with them. And Driedger was a guy who wanted a little backwards flow, even on a release, like, on a point shot that was going down low as sort of a fake point shot down low, he'd be backwards flowing. And I remember actually thinking to myself at the time, man, well, nobody's going to be backwards flowing on a point shot, but hello, Linus Ullmark, and the Boston Bruins. And by the way, there are a few others around the league that have subtly added that to their game this season. So there's a tease for future weeks.
What's old is new again.
And Brossoit was very much like point to point, and just two completely different approaches in terms of depth, movement, how they wanted to handle essentially the same drill. And I just loved watching and listening to Freddy Chabot work through the pluses and minuses of how each of them played it and find a solution where they could limit the exposure from the minuses and make sure they accentuate the positives. And it just, to me, was a perfect example of the need to not just have things one way, and especially in that environment where you're not working with your guys. Maybe if it was your guy and you're going to spend 5 years with him, you might try and make a bigger change, but just the need to sort of work with different goalies' strengths and weaknesses and not try and shove them all into the same box. And I thought he did it so well. It was during that drill and listening back to the audio and going over the video, it's like, yeah, now I see why Devin Dubnyk was, said this guy was such a good coach. And we've seen that transpire in Minnesota again with the success they're having there. And so I was really grateful that he took some time. He's got about 40 minutes here after getting home at 5 a.m. from a road trip through Vancouver and through the NHL trade deadline to sit down and go not just through his career, but through his career as a goalie coach and also as a goalie, and see how some of those evolutions took place. And what's old is new again. There are some things, as he'll tell us here, including a drill from his former goalie coach, Bernie Parent, that he still uses today with the Minnesota Wild. So that was definitely not 45 seconds. It was definitely not 50 words, but hopefully it did justice to the kind of person and quality goalie coach that Freddy Chabot is, and we're honored to have him on the InGoal Radio Podcast. Really excited to welcome to the InGoal Radio Podcast for the first time a goalie coach that I had the pleasure of getting to meet. I'm trying to remember how many years ago, and got to watch him work on the ice, and can't wait to have him share some of the insights he has from the game from a 17-year playing career. Another 9 now coaching in the NHL. Freddy Chabot of the Minnesota Wild now. Thank you so much for joining us on the InGoal Radio Podcast. I'm really excited to catch up.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I was trying to think where to start, Freddie, and I wanted to, obviously coaching now more than a decade, 6 years in Edmonton, 3 years in Minnesota, and coaching obviously outside of the NHL as well, both privately and for teams. The natural thing is to start with where you are now, but I want to go back to the playing days, because you had a 17-year career as a pro, including time with the Montreal Canadiens, Philadelphia Flyers, Los Angeles Kings. But more interesting to me, especially now that you're coaching, is like I look at the junior, you're in junior in 86, 87 in Drummondville, right around that time where we sort of, at least for those of us on the outside, we consider that maybe the birth of the butterfly and François Allaire and sort of all this massive evolutions in goaltending. So I'm curious where you started, because you've seen so much change over the year. Like if you could take me back to the playing days and Freddy Chabot as a young goaltender, as part of this evolution, like where were you on that scale? Where were you as a goalie as things started to change around you back in the early days?
Well, I think as a little kid, I was really mesmerized by goaltenders, and I wanted to play goal. I started playing out front, and I played defenseman. And one day, one coach gave me an opportunity to play goal, and that was it. I was a goalie from that day on, and I wasn't big on those skate saves and stand-up saves. I was more of a Tony Esposito type of goaltenders. I was not afraid of going down and using my pads and just battling for every puck. And so when I guess the birth of the butterfly you call is, I think the butterfly was already there. There's just François Allaire just made it more efficient. When he came along, and I had a chance to work under him from 89 to 94, I believe. And that was a huge influence on my playing days and my coaching days.
Okay, so you mentioned that you were with the Montreal Canadiens organization, drafted by the Devils in 86, but you end up with the Canadiens all those years when you were with and had a chance to work with Allaire. What was like? You get him as a goalie coach at a time when not a lot of organizations, even in the NHL, had goalie coaches other than sort of been there, done that guys. What was that experience like? And I'm curious. You mentioned Esposito, and I think guys like me forget that there was a butterfly before Allaire. So for you, back in those days, like you said, more like a Tony Esposito, is that just from watching? Like, was it a lot of self-teaching? What was the evolution like as a goalie when, back in a day where we didn't have 500,000 goalie coaches working with us?
Well, I think I was age Atom or Pee Wee. Where I grew up, there was a guy named Guy Lapointe. He was a high school teacher, and he was just passionate about goaltending. And there was a small hockey school, maybe 15 minutes from where I grew up. And my parents sent me there about 3-4 years in a row. And we would spend the whole week we had our own goaltenders, like dressing room, where goaltenders of all ages all dressed together. He had posters on the walls of goaltenders. He did video with us. He would show, I don't know where he got his video, but he would show us teaching on goaltenders from the AHLs, from international hockey, how to make save, how to play the game, how to train. And he brought a lot of stuff, and he was so passionate about it. He made it very fun. So there was some coaching there. Then you just took that, whatever he gave you, and you went on for your season and tried to duplicate what he was teaching us. And then the next time I got coaching was really specialized goaltender coaching, was midget AAA in Sainte Foy. There was a guy named Jacques No who coached Patrick Roy, and he coached François Gravel, and he was really, really good on both the like playing on the ice, but also how to prepare, how to read the opposition. It was a big learning experience there, and from there, I think that was a big like kickstart for me to play well in junior and get a pro career.
Okay, so how to read the game, how to read the opponent, those early lessons. I think it's fair to say those are probably still important lessons today for all the focus that maybe guys like me and InGoal Magazine put on the technical side of the game. One of the things we try and do with pro reads too is, try and help show kids the type of details that goalies pick out. It sounds like you got some exposure to that early on. Now that you're coaching and having come up through those routes, like, is there more we can do? Is there things you do with young goaltenders, even right up to the NHL, to sort of learn how to read the game better and, get better at those elements that maybe we don't think of as technical, but maybe a little more tactical and anticipation wise?
Well, as on the coaching side, I think it's getting to know your goalies, how they think, what they see, it's conversations, maybe just a couple of words between periods, see how they feel, how they feel about how the game is going, what the other team is doing, and what to expect, what's coming for the next period. Just a matter of being ready and being aware makes a big difference.
Is it like, do you use a lot of, I guess obviously not within a game and in those conversations, but is it something you use, like, do you use a lot of video to build those anticipation skills up? And I guess at the NHL level, it can be very specific to a team, to an individual, to a power play. But in more general terms, is it something you think we can teach goalies more at younger ages, even in terms of learning the skills of reading a game, connecting the patterns out there?
Yeah, I think let's say you have a chance to coach a kid for a whole season with a team, and you often play the same teams over and over. You can teach them how to read the position. Like some teams, they have, in minor hockey, there's always 1, 2, or 3 players on the team that would make the difference. So if you can help your goaltender recognize the signs of how those players play, what they do well, and how to stop them, then in the long run, they're going to be able to do that by themselves.
What are some of the biggest changes you've seen? And maybe now we're getting a little more into now and the coaching, but you can reflect on it throughout your career in terms of the way the game is played in front of goaltenders and the demands on the position because of the nature of the attack. Like we've seen it in the last few years, a lot more east-west, a lot more dynamic. How have you seen that evolve, and how have you had to ask your goaltenders to adapt to sort of counter it or be prepared for it?
well, like you say, there's a lot more east-west. Guys will pass on really good shooting opportunity to make an extra pass, and they'll do it over and over again. So I think our goalies today have, again, like before, like I was saying before, when I worked with Francois there, my first few days with Francois was a shock because how much skating we did. Francois just skated me to the ground pretty much for months until he got what he wanted, until I was playing the way he wanted me to play. And it was a good teaching lesson because in pro hockey, if you can't move, you can't play. So, and the game is so dynamic and fast, it keeps getting faster and there's more and more passing plays. So you need to be very good on your skates and be able to beat plays, and your mobility on your knees is just as important. So as far as reads, you can make reads a lot better when you're able to stay on your blades and hold your feet as long as you can.
Did that surprise you going into your first experience with Francois? Like the amount of skating that you were asked to do? And again, I think there maybe are some stereotypes that exist around Francois when we think of the butterfly and things like that. And yet your first experience is skating. Did it surprise you at the time? And are there still lessons there, it sounds like, that apply even today?
Oh, it applies big time today. And yeah, it did surprise me at the time. And the amount of work we put every day and just being able to be square and set on every shot, it demands a really big workload of work before the shot is taken. So his mentality back then, I'm sure it still is today, was you got to work hard before the shot. He knew his goaltenders were able to make saves, but he wanted us to work really hard before the shot and after the shot to get ready for the next one. So, and it was all about skating, push and stop and being set and being square and make the save and do it again. So it's the same thing today. And now that the guys are now more holding on to pucks and making more passes, the demands is even higher.
The way you approach that with your goaltenders, you talk about being surprised by the amount of skating you did with Francois. We see a lot of kids in youth hockey these days, like, hey, we all want drills with like multiple passes and dynamic movement and lots of shots. Do you think a lot of young goalies or maybe goalie parents would be surprised watching an NHL practice, well, maybe an NHL goalie practice with you and your goalies, at how much of it is still based on movements as opposed to quote unquote crazy drills with pucks flying everywhere?
Yeah, if you see, I think so. Probably some parents that maybe played a little bit wouldn't be that surprised, but parents that haven't played would be surprised by the amount of skating a goaltender has to do.
What are some of your favorite ones, without giving too much away? But like, how do you get that mindset with your goaltenders? How much, like, walk me through a typical, say, if there's a practice and you're out with your goalies before practice for a certain amount of time, how much of that is focused on skating and movement, and how important? I mean, you've got a guy who's headed in the Hall of Fame in Marc-Andre Fleury, and I'm guessing he recognizes the same thing, the importance of all that movement work. Whether all the greats seem to, like, again, we all want those dynamic drills, I think, as goalies, but I watch these guys work and it's so much just movement, crease movement patterns. How much of your day is dedicated to that?
Well, I make sure we warm up properly. Then we'll do 1 or 2 skating drills. And skating drills, the way I go about it, it's always has to do with what I want from my goalie and what I think is good for him. And also what is the next team we're going to play against, how they play, if there's some plays are repetitive that they do again and again. If I can pattern my skating drill around that to help my goalies prepare for the game, then I will do that. So it includes post work, it includes beating the pass, it includes holding the top of the crease, all type of things like that.
So if every day includes a crease movement pattern, and there's a team, for example, that likes a play or likes to work from below the goal line or likes a play to a certain spot on the ice, you'll just make sure the movement patterns, maybe more so than another day, mimic that?
Yeah.
And in terms of sort of making sure that your guys keep that work up, is that an easy ask, I guess, at that level for guys and movement patterns? Again, like we think of the kids wanting something more dynamic, but at the NHL level, when guys get to that level, do they realize how important that stuff is?
I think they appreciate it because they know it's useful. It's helps them get prepared for what's in front of them. And as you know, we don't practice very much. In the
Right.
second half of the year, we don't practice. So any 5 minutes you can grab and do some work, or some five. Sometimes you have a luxury of having 10 minutes, maybe before or after practice, and you can focus on basic stuff like that. You grab it and you use it. You don't want to waste time because we don't practice much.
You got a guy who, like I said, is headed to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and Marc-Andre Fleury. You talked about the importance of movement, not just on your skates, but also from the knees. I would argue he might be a guy that changed the game a little bit in terms of just how explosive and dynamic he was from his knees. Some of his recovery mechanics and the speed and the power with which he did it. What's it been like working with him in terms of a guy who's got so much experience, and yet I remember when he was in Chicago telling me that he added overlap because he liked how Kevin Lankinen did it. Like, is he a guy that's still, willing and eager to try new things even after all these years?
Yeah, Marc-Andre is always, like you said before, the best one, the top ones, they're always trying to get better. Doesn't matter how old they are. They're always trying to find an edge to get better at how they stop the puck, how they skate, how they move, how they use the post. So we're always looking at ways to improve and finding what works, at what we can do better.
You've got another top goalie there in Philip Gustafson having a heck of a year. How much interplay is there between the two? I just talked about Fleury, even well into his career, wanting to learn from the other guy. Do you see them feeding off each other and learning from each other? And are there times in your coaching career we will see some goalies mimic the guy they play with, even not on purpose? Like, they just pick up habits. Are there times where you've had to maybe even be worried about that or cognizant of it because there might be something that a goalie picks up from his playing partner, but it might not suit his game?
Yeah, that happens all the time. 1 year I played in Hershey, and my partner was a young goalie for the Flyers organization. His name was Scott Legrand. And He was a tall and skinny kid. He had a really upright stance. And I played more of a game really low, and it's resemble a little bit how Marc-Andre stands sometimes, really low and explosive. But at 5'10", sometimes I was thinking, man, I should find a way to play a little bigger. But as the season went on, I caught myself starting to do things that Scotty was doing. And that was helpful for me in that season. I had a really good season and realized I was maybe standing a little higher in my upper body and making myself bigger. And it helped me. But there were some years where I would on purpose try not to watch the guy at the other end because the way he played didn't work for me. So it was, if you don't even realize you're always watching the other guy, you start doing some of the things he does. But like you said, it's not always helpful. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
Is that common? I've always wondered, actually, and I kind of assumed, and I've seen a few examples here over the years, but is that just a natural thing when you watch a guy day in, day out over the course of a season to start to imitate some of those habits without even thinking about it sometimes?
Yeah, there's always an influence. It's just in front of you all the time. So if there's something you see the other guy having success doing a certain thing on a game situation, you start trying it for fun, then it may leak into your game. And sometimes it's good, but sometimes it's like, okay, it works for him, but this is not for me.
What are some, is there, I mean, without giving too much away, what makes and I know it's just this season and the end of last season that you've had this direct work with him, but what is it that allows Marc-Andre to still have the success he has at this age and this far into his career and to still play at such a high level?
Well, first is the person he is. He's a fantastic human being. He's really hungry. He's a team guy. The way he practices and competes every day, he's a fantastic example for Philip this year. And for anyone who plays with him, he makes practice fun. But I think it's just his basic physical abilities to play the game, to read the game, and his amazing skills, like how fast he is, how explosive he is. There's a lot of things he can do that very few guys can do when they're 20 years old.
The fun part, It's something we've written about it over the years. Like, I remember watching him still play last puck, even if he was starting before a game. Do we discount that sometimes too much? Like just how much fun he has. It seems to be a foundation for him. I guess when this game becomes a job for some guys, and maybe for some guys at too early an age, and they lose that, like, is it important? I know it is for him. Do you think it's important for more guys to somehow remember that it is still supposed to be fun out there? Their value in that?
Oh, there's a huge value in that, but there's some days, depending on what's going on, that it's hard to have fun. So some days you're having fun, but you're just not being silly. You're just working. You're really, really hard. And there's some days that you got to put in the work. And when the practice is over, then you feel good about it. And you said, well, it was hard, but it was fun. And but also Marc-Andre brings a smile on the ice and his attitude. And most of the time he's got a huge smile and he's teasing the guys on every shot. And he's having a good time out there.
The way the game's changed, and with your experience from the playing days, we talked about your experience in the Montreal organization, but even when you were with Montreal and played some games with Montreal, there were trips back and forth to the American Hockey League. There was a stint in the IHL, a few games even in the ECHL. I'm guessing you would have had different voices, different coaches over the years. It's something we've talked to goalies about, like sometimes when even in the same organization, the goalie coach can change at multiple levels. Learning to manage different people with different opinions on your game as a goalie, has that helped serve you as a goalie coach in any way? Like, did you go through that at times where you went from one team to the other and you're thinking, okay, this guy wants me to do something different. I'm not sure it works for me, but if I don't try it, he's the guy that controls whether I play. Like, did you have experiences like that as a goalie when you were playing, and how has that maybe influenced what you do now, running a goalie department and working in a goalie department and coaching in the National Hockey League and working with, say, a Richard Bachman as your guy in the development and American League side?
Yeah, well, I think the message within the organization has to be linear. So what the goaltender in the American League hears is going to be the same thing he hears in the NHL. There may be a few little details that are not the same, but the basics have to be the same. During my career, I was lucky enough to have a few really good goalie coach. But sometimes it's not just the goalie; it's the head coach or an assistant coach. It's the relationships are a big part of every season, and when most of the time there's a lot of good people in hockey, they find a way to guide you as a player and help you. And once in a while, you get a relationship that doesn't work, then you got to find a way to work through it and find a way to do your job, even though the relationship with the coach or assistant coach is not great.
Were there some influences, like we've obviously talked about Francois as the natural sort of jumping off point because you started in the Montreal organization, but some of those other influences, some of those other voices that helped you along the way that maybe still impact you today as a coach and how you approach it?
When I was a little stint with the Flyers, it was I had Bernie Perrin as a goalie coach. He made me laugh because he didn't really want to be there. He came to the ring because they kind of forced him to come. And so he came on the ice, and there's a couple of drills I did with him that I still do today with my goalies.
Really?
And his message was simple, and it was fun, it was challenging, but it was simple and easy to put into my game, into the way I practice, the way I deal with certain plays, and it was fun. And I was like, man, I wish if he would love to do that job, he would be even better at it. But he was a really good individual, fun to be around, and working with him, just a little that I was with him, I really enjoyed it. Also, my second stint with Montreal, I had Rolly Melanson, and he was really good for me. I played well under him. And I had the chance to be coached by Billy Smith also when I was in the Florida organization. And that was fun. That was very different, but it was fun.
A lot. I mean, those are three extreme examples. Maybe extreme is not the word, but I mean, we just had a goalie on from the Canucks organization who had Billy as his goalie coach in the Ontario Hockey League. And a lot of the things he talked about were just things like controlling shots and using your stick, maybe using your stick in other ways too, which was something Billy was really good at. But Roley, I think of Roley being more technical. And then, as you said, Bernie, I mean, I'm a little, again, probably ignorant on my part, but I'm surprised to hear you say there were drills then that you still use today. If it's not giving too much away, can you give me an example of one of those and where the value that you saw, back then in 93, 94 still applies in 2023? That's a pretty large time gap. So the fact you're still using those drills, is there anything you can share without giving too much away? Maybe one example there.
Oh, it's a very simple drill. You had two players with the pucks on the dots.
Right.
And there was a pass from dot to dot. And he wanted me to beat it on my feet. And the guy caught it and shot as quick as he could. He was even allowed to one-time it. After we did it for a while, they let the guys one-time it. So I was just trying to beat the pass on my feet. And then you realize, okay, depending how good the pass is, you either need to go to the post. And if the pass is slow or medium speed, then I can get to the top of the crease. So you have to make that read and try to beat that pass on your feet. Then after a while, when the goalie gets good at it, you can add the player that catches the pass while staying on the dot. He's allowed to pass it back to the guy that started the drill. That's kind of creeping in back door. So now you got to beat the first pass, and you have to be aware that if he passes it back, then you need to slide back to the post and try to beat the pass again. So simple. It's challenging, simple, and it's fun.
And sort of going back to what you talked about with Allaire, skating, beating it up, beating passes on your feet and being able to make subtle reads within that. It reminds me a little bit of sort of, one of the philosophies I heard actually was Devin Dubnyk, who used to, when he had you in Edmonton, I remember he used to rave about his work with you. And I know he was happy when you went to Minnesota while he was there. One of the things that he cued in on, like, if I can't beat the pass on my feet, it probably means I'm too far out.
Yeah, well, I think when he worked with
Sean,
he put that even more into play while staying a little deeper. But yeah, that was.
But a similar philosophy, a similar mindset.
Yeah, I did a lot of skating with Devin. I thought for a big guy, he had very good mobility. You just had to improve it and simplify it, and he was. I love working with him.
What was it about Roley that you loved? Because I got a chance to watch Roley work here in Vancouver with the Canucks under Alain Vigneault for a lot of years and was a big fan of his work. I know he had some hard and firm rules by the time he got here in terms of always being in the blue ice. Like, are there elements you can share that you learned from your time with Melanson in Montreal that maybe still apply to you today too? Because I'm guessing, much like goalies take pieces from everyone over the years to build into their game, is it the same as a goalie coach?
Yeah, I think it's the same. You improve as you go. And I think when I worked with Roley, he was early in his coaching career and he had work under Francois Allaire a few years before he retired. And so I think some of his mentality, the way he was coaching, the way he was making us work on the ice resembled what Francois was doing. So it fit with me right away. And first, he was a fun guy to work with. And what he told me at the time, I was coming back from the IHL where I was doing really well. And he said he wasn't happy how I was moving. He said, you're stopping the puck, but he said, you're slow. I was like, I'm slow. He said, yeah, you're slow. You're late on everything. So I said, okay. And we put in the work. And maybe 10 days after that, I started seeing the benefits. And 2 weeks after that, I was like, wow, okay, I see the difference now.
And you're well along in your career at that point. Like you said, you're coming off a couple seasons in the IHL where you're like 920, 916, having a lot of success. Is there a good lesson there for goalies of all ages to keep an open mind and not be like, hey, I'm what I'm doing is good enough. Why you want to change me?
Well, that's a message I give pretty much to all goalies. You got to work on your skating all the time, and the older you get, the more you got to work at it because you don't realize it, but that's one thing you lose. You don't lose your hockey sense. You don't lose your ability to catch a puck or make a save, but you will lose your skating. So you got to work at it.
Have you seen changes? Like, it's funny because we think of, actually, I don't even know how I would define skating and goalie skating. But we've seen sort of some of the way coaches look at the efficiencies there evolve over the years. And yet there are still things that haven't changed in terms of, emphasis points? What have you seen change in terms of, when you think of what a good skater is, has it changed that much from when you played to now in terms of goaltending? Is it all about beating that pass and being set regardless of how you do it? Or have you seen more of a breakdown in how goalies move? Like, for some coaches, they analyze it almost like a golf swing, like slow, 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 in terms of making sure we get to maximum efficiency. How have you seen that evolve over the last decade?
Well, it hasn't changed much. Skating is skating. Fitness has a lot to do with it, and some natural ability. Some guys are naturally better, but if you work at it, you'll be good at it. I think what we see a little more. I teach a little more shuffle than I used to. I'll be more open as working edges, like the old days, like I did as a little kid. I think it's coming back. We used to do edge work, outside edge, inside edge. We're getting back to that. I think it's good for the goalies. They need it because how fast the game is. But yeah, maybe a little more shuffle, but still beating the pass with a T-push. It's number one on my list.
So shuffles, just because the game's become so dynamic, east-west, and often east-west and back the other way, does the shuffle just allow you to not have that open and close of a T-push, so you sort of maintain the ability to go back and forth a little bit? Is that where we see the benefits of it?
Well, I don't think I will ever like the long shuffles.
Okay.
So I think it's detrimental to any goalie's game. A goalie needs to be able to use shuffle, but in the proper way. Small shuffles when the player carries the puck, or on a short pass, you don't need to open up for a T-push. If you're fit and strong enough and a good skater, you can beat it with a shuffle. But the kind of I've seen a little bit of that where guys kind of shuffle and shift into a save. I think long term it creates problems. You want to be set and square.
And that's something that's never changed, has it? Like, as much as the game evolves and we get VH and reverse VH and overlap, and at the end of the day, the principle is being set and square on a shooter.
Yeah. Well, all the post work, I think, came along because of the size of the goalies today.
Yep.
It was a lot easier for a 5'10" guy like me to work with the post than a guy who's 6'2" or 6'4". So, yeah, all the work with the post now, to me, all has to do with size.
From a playing career standpoint, I wanted to ask you a little bit, like, after that year in Montreal, you went back to the IHL with Houston for 2 more years, and then you went overseas and had a ton of success in the DEL, posted some, frankly, gaudy numbers over there, and spent, looks like 5-6 years over there towards the end of your career. At about the time when I think the VH came in, so I got 2 parts here. One, any lessons that you learned over there that were different? Obviously the size of the rink, maybe not the game and style of game was different. I'm not sure if in the DEL it might have been a little more North American style. But in Austria, I think of it as maybe a little more east-west. Were there differences there that influenced you in your coaching career today? And where were you in that evolution of post-play? Because I'm thinking right towards the end of your career, that's where we started to see a lot of sort of VH, one knee down stuff. Was that something you had to integrate in your career in those final years?
Well, at that point, I didn't really get any coaching.
Okay.
I was pretty much coaching myself. So I learned the VH by watching guys do it and trying to copy it. I wasn't really good at it. I think somehow I was comfortable doing it on my blocker side. I think most guys today prefer doing it on their glove side. On my glove side, I remember the last few years I played, I was always tweaking with it, and I was starting to go what you call the reverse VH now. I was starting to go down early on my knees because I just wanted to seal the ice, and I didn't like the VH. I felt a little lost doing it. So, I was trying to teach myself some new stuff and find solutions. But the VH, I wish I had someone to teach it to me properly. I probably would have used it a lot, but I didn't use it that much.
Is there value there too? Like maybe from the, you mentioned, talk about late in their career, whether you learned something in Europe. I mean, even the fact you didn't have a goalie coach there, do we need kids to be their own goalie coach more, much like you had to be in Europe, as much as, even at very young ages, they have influences and voices and people that can help them, and that's all positive. do goalies need to learn to manage their own game these days, like you had to in those years?
Well, I think it's, even if you're a head coach or an assistant coach, you don't have to be a goalie coach with young kids. It's just by having conversation about the game and asking them what they see, how they felt, and asking them question, would they do something different? And just by conversation with the young kids, no matter their age, if they're 15, 12, or 9 years old, they play the game, they have fun. I'm sure they make reads, and then you got to talk with them so they can learn to how to use those reads they make and how to think the game.
Does that a big part of your conversation with your guys right up to your level? Like, it sounds like when you're having these conversations, Freddie, it really is a conversation. It's not you going to them and saying, hey, you got to do this, as much as it is trying to understand the thought process of why they did it their way.
Well, it depends how old the goalie is. If I'm working with the younger guys as a pro, I'll be more direct and demanding. And the older the guy gets, or the longer I've been working with him, I'll be more asking questions. I want them to talk. I want them to find solutions. Players have to be empowered on the ice. Like when the goalie goes out to play the puck and the exchange with his D, if it doesn't go right, I appreciate when I see them talking about it right away and finding solutions. They have to do that by themselves.
You've the success you guys are having this year, right down to the minor leagues too. You've got a young goaltender in Jesper Wallstedt coming up. How does your approach have to differ, say, with a guy coming over for the first time? And I know you've got Richard Bachman in the American League working with you, with Jesper more directly. But how does your approach have to differ when it's a guy coming over for the first time and learning the league and learning those types of things versus, say, a Marc-Andre Fleury who's been doing it for over 20 years and even a Philip Gustafson who's still relatively young in his career? How do you have to sort of alter things to the individuals based on experience?
Well, a guy like Jesper, I think my message to Richard was that I let him play his game and see, and let's make adjustment as we go. But there's some basic stuff that you still got to make him work hard every day and work on his skating, like we said before.
Right. And
we're making sure we clean up the post play and how to adjust to the game here. So by watching him now here, how he plays the game and how the game is played in America, he's made some adjustment already, and he's going to have to keep making those adjustments as he grows older.
And for a guy, it's funny because when I asked Flower about Philip when you guys were in town recently, the first thing he talked about, because you mentioned post play with Jesper, the first thing he talked about with Philip was how good his post play was, and he mentioned Swedish goalies and I think he mentioned Linda Blomqvist and reverse VH and some of the things that Philip seems really good at. I guess just because Jesper comes from Sweden doesn't mean those details are all dialed in at the exact same level as Fleury seemed to think Phillips were.
Yeah, well, there's a difference in age. When Jesper started the season, he's 19.
Right.
When Phillips comes to us, he's 24. He's got a few thousand hours of work ahead of him. So, yeah, maybe the post play is a little cleaner. And, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. And Phillips post plays, he's elite. He's very good at it. He's calm. He can go in and out of it very efficiently, and he can come out of it and battle too, which is really nice to see.
Okay, I got one more for you here because I've taken up too much of your time, which is a bad habit of mine, Freddie. But I got to ask you, now coaching, going back to your playing days, what do you think when you look at the equipment these days, like compare it to what you started in? I guess it probably looks seamless, but if you were to compare it to what you were playing in, like how much do you think the evolution of the equipment has played a role in the way these guys are able to play today and in the way you're able to coach?
Well, the equipment today is awesome. I think when I started playing pro or in junior or midget, it was more a question of survival.
Right.
Even before midget, the equipment we had, you had bruise all the time on your knees, on your shoulders, on your arms, on your ribs. And getting into midget hockey or junior, the equipment got a little bit better as far as protection, but you're still getting hurt. And I became a pro. I started learning how to there were some kind of equipments that were better than other, how to pick equipment and what worked for me and how to sometimes improve the equipment I was wearing. And but now today the gear is absolutely awesome. It's light, it dries fast. The way they slide on the ice and seal the ice, it's really nice to see. The knee pads are fantastic. They're like the amount of bruise I had on my knees was just ridiculous.
Is that from shots or from just simply dropping to the ice? Because
There were shots.
Oh, okay.
Shots, yeah. And and the shoulder pads too. Like a few years ago, they made changes, made them smaller, and guys were starting to get hurt again. I was like, well, welcome to my days. But now they fix those issues, and the equipment is the size that the league wants it, and the guys feel protected that they won't get hurt.
So for you, like last one, like I think for a lot of this generation, like they don't understand that the fear factor. Everybody used to say goalies are crazy, and I'm not even sure that this generation understands that, because the fear factor was real back then, wasn't it? Like maybe fear is the wrong word, but like the pain factor was real. You had to be willing to feel that puck to be a goalie when you were growing up.
Oh yeah, well, you get hit or somewhere it hurt, you just suck it up for maybe 30 seconds or a minute, then you just keep going. And then after practice, you get a nice big bruise, and you hope not to get hit on the same spot the next day.
It's definitely changed a lot. I don't think the shots have gotten a lot harder, but I don't think any of these guys are feeling pucks that much, that often anymore.
No, yeah, but you're right, though. The sticks today, it's just incredible how hard the shots come, how good the kids all shoot. The hand skills I see watching the games now, like players can pick pucks out of the air almost on every play. They either cut a pass or they bat one. Offensively, they make an offensive play or defensive play, and just amazing the hand skills. And I was part of the transition when they went from the aluminum stick to the 2-piece stick to the 1-piece. And before that, you would have 2, 3, 4 players that could really shoot that you worried about in practice. And then the next year, it was everybody, so it was, you didn't worry about the guys on the third or the fourth line, about them hurting you with a shot, except if they lost one and it hit you high. But there was 2 or 3 players that could really shoot it. And now it was everybody. So we had to watch everybody. It was worrisome at first.
And now it's just worrisome because they're also, as you said, so incredibly skilled. But I guess that's the job, right? That's up to us now on the goalie side to figure out how to prevent, or how to do our best to limit what those guys can do with all those skills.
Yeah, and sometimes I watch the games, and our goalies or the other team goalies, and what the goalies do today is just amazing. It's fantastic to watch. And I was a little kid. We had the Montreal Canadiens on TV every Saturday night. And when I got a little older, I got smart enough to tweak the TV so I could have the CBC in English and watch the Maple Leafs. They had Mike Palmetier, and that was really entertaining. And now watching the goalies, I'm like, wow, the young kids watching that, they must be really entertained.
It is. I think we lose perspective that there's so much focus on the media side on goal scoring or this and that and scoring trends. At the end of the day, whether it's the goal scorers or the goalies, the talent level has never been better, and it's really fun to watch it.
Yeah. Like even last night was a very tight defensive game in Calgary. There was still some really nice hockey plays made in that game. There was some big saves, and there was some big hits, and there was a few goals.
Well, none on your guy, so congratulations to him on that, and it's been a trend we've seen of late. Congratulations to you and the Wild on a good season so far, and we hope you guys continue going. I love watching both your guys. Always been a fan of watching Flower, but also Philip Gustafson, and can't wait to watch Jesper coming up. Freddie, I thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I know our audience is going to really enjoy this interview, and I can't thank you enough amid a busy schedule with lots of travel and getting home at 5 a.m. for taking the time to talk with us here at InGoal Magazine Podcast.
You're welcome. You guys do a great job, and thanks for taking the time.
When I work with goaltenders, I always reinforce using practice as a time to work on things like holding your edges, because if the puck goes in the net in practice, I don't care. Take a chance, Stay on your edges at a time that maybe you'd be sliding normally. Use practice to experiment and see and learn your reads so that you know when you can and when you can't hold your edges. But here he's just got such a simple way of letting guys figure it out for themselves, because those are two very common marks on the ice that he's using in that drill. If they work to hold their edges in those spots, I think you can probably evolve that drill a little bit, maybe bring the guys in a little bit, maybe move them out a little bit, let the goalie experiment. But there's just a nice, clean, crisp way of working on holding your edges. So just love that one. I think the goaltenders from the Nanaimo Clippers will be seeing that one in the next couple of weeks. And I've mentioned it to my kid too, so maybe he'll bring it to one of his practices.
So I think we also need to fund an InGoal Radio, InGoal magazine trip to Minnesota, just so we can watch Freddie do that.
Oh, Freddie, we're coming.
Marc-Andre Fleury and Philip Gustafson, because I got a couple minutes with Flower when he was here, but it's never enough time. So road trip is definitely in the works here, because like I said, I loved watching Freddie work in Kelowna, and you can see the quality of his work and the effect it's having at the National Hockey League level with, again, like two totally different goaltenders with two totally different, one guy at the beginning of his career, another guy who I almost said at the end of his career, but that's not fair because Flower's playing so well he could keep playing for a long time, but a guy with so much experience and, you know, that ability to thread that needle with each of them. I'm not surprised that Freddie has been able to do that.
Well, you're describing the art of coaching and not just the science, and you're describing a master coach, because he is a person who does not need to get out on the ice and convince the other goaltenders that he's the most intelligent person on the ice and you better do it his way. He's got a humility to him, and I think that makes him a great coach.
Well, we heard him talk about it, right? Getting to know your goaltenders. As much as I was trying to dig for specifics, like so much of it is just getting to know them as individuals rather than dictating to them based on your experiences exclusively.
Yeah. But there's other coaches that might be lip service. Yeah, I want to get to know them as individuals, but then they get on the ice and they tell them, here's the way you have to do it. And I think that was getting to know them with a purpose, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Well, speaking of getting to know goalies.
Okay.
I may be a little premature with this tease because we haven't set up the time. But some point in the next couple of episodes, we are going to have Andy Svord on. Swedish goalie sports psychologist with dozens of clients, professional goaltenders in Europe, and I believe in the NHL. I know for sure some that have been in the NHL. Didn't get his client list off the top, but I spent an hour with him just prepping for this interview, and I'm really excited when we get to bring it to you because it's not just psychology from a here's tips for goaltenders. He digs into the actual personality profile of each individual one to understand how they react to the different stresses of the position, does stress tests with them so they understand how their body reacts to it, and then builds out programs from there. A guy who we had a few goaltenders reach out to us about, and they all say, they can all be different personalities, and they'll all say the same thing, Andy knows me best, or like no one else does. That's what makes him so special. And it kind of reminded me, as you were talking about Freddie getting to know his goaltenders, this guy has an art and a science to getting to know goaltenders and then helping them be better goaltenders between the years. So we sort of did a pre-interview, get to know each other, and I learned so much in that hour. I cannot wait till we have the final one set up and bring it to our listeners here on the InGoal Radio Podcast. So make sure you stay tuned for that in the coming weeks.
Can't wait. I think there's so much to learn for all of us in that area, and it's such an important part of the game. Woody, over at InGoal right now, it kind of feels like it's Boston Bruins week.
Yeah, and hey, listen, we're not going to apologize.
However, celebrate it. You got the best goaltender in the league right now.
100%, but we don't want to feel like we're like, sometimes, you get that and you're like, oh, look at us. We got Linus Ullmark, so come subscribe because we got Linus Ullmark. I just want to thank Linus Ullmark for the time, and Jeremy Swayman too.
Yep. The
time he gave to us when he came through Vancouver. Very gracious with it. Sat down, did pro reads for 25 minutes after a practice. This is a beautiful city with beautiful places to go and eat, and he still had time to sit down and do it. So thank you to him. And yeah, we are proud that we got this content. It's amazing content, and there's lots more like it coming. So make sure you subscribe to the InGoal premium product at ingoalmag.com. 3 articles up and lots more coming.
But what I loved about the pro reads with Linus Ullmark is he got you. Because Woody is famous at the end of every interview for one more question.
I
which
just
usually
did it
turns
to
into
Freddie.
2, usually turns into 3. And with Linus Ullmark, if you got to hear the entire recording, which you won't because I'm just cutting out the individual pro reads, near the end, there's a little knock on the door. Guys, this dressing room is needed for a group that's coming in right now. Kevin apologizes, says, we're on the last one. He finishes it. Okay, Linus, that's great. Really appreciate all the time. And Linus, no, one more, Woody. Let's go. Give me another one. So he sort of one more questioned you, and that told me how much he enjoyed sharing his knowledge. And I love these pro reads. I think there's a lot there, and I think he looks at things in a great way, and I'm thankful that he's sharing his knowledge with all of us.
Yeah, and I gave him a ride back to the hotel after we finished because obviously the team bus was long gone, and he feels like it's his way of giving back to the goalie community. Like, he's not doing it just for us at InGoal. He's doing it because he sees that as like he said it to me, this is my opportunity to give back to the goalie community. And I know our audience at InGoalMag.com appreciates that. Where else can you sit in on a video session with one of the best goalies in the game and have him walk you through your reads? And it's not possible unless guys like Linus and Thatcher Demko and Yaroslav Halak, and hopefully coming up soon, Jeremy Swayman and Carter Hart and all these guys that have agreed to do it with us. It's not possible unless they also see the value in it and they see, that give back as being something they want to be a part of. So thank you to all those guys, all the guys that have done it with us in the past. It means a lot to our audience. It means a lot to us. I think it means a lot to the goaltending community, and we're proud to bring it to you.
100%. I know my son loves to sit down and binge on the pro reads. He's not so big on reading all your writing, Woody, even though it's brilliantly crafted, but he goes straight to that final pro read video on each of the articles and just watches them, and he picks stuff up from the guys. I think it's fantastic.
Well, I wouldn't read my stuff either. Just go straight. That's a good reminder, though. You can go straight to the video. We do a preamble there where we show you a freeze frame because we want the young goalies to think about, okay, what information am I looking for? What are my cues as to how I should play this? Before the NHL goalie tells you his answers, we're just trying to prime you, almost like, this is something I got from you, just being a little bit of a teacher, trying to make it a lesson. So if you want to read and go through that, great. But if you don't, you just want to hear what the NHL guy has to say, I don't blame you. Straight to the video at the end. I think you even put a link on each one. Just take me to the video at the top, and it jumps you right down to the bottom.
But if you've watched 50 or 100 of these or whatever number you might have been through, I think you're going to find that exercise really interesting, and you will start picking up the things that these NHL goalies pick up. Hey, you know what? We've got a tip for how you can put some of this stuff into place, but we'll save it for a future article at InGoal. I'm not going to give it away just yet.
All right. That's what we call a tease in the business. See, we didn't need Darren. Give him the day off. Hutch has got a tease. Professional at its best.
Okay, Woody, I think they probably had enough of us. So our thanks.
I've had enough of us.
To the Hockey Shop source for sports, Langley. Our thanks to Sense Arena VR Trading for Goaltenders. And of course, our thanks to you wherever you're listening. On behalf of Darren Millard and Kevin Woodley, I'm David Hutchison, wishing you another great week in goal.